I've been attempting to do a second stream today for quite some time. I've been involved with making various efforts and uh, doing different things, but I decided that one topic I really wanted to get into um, and address and just kind of convey from the standpoint of someone who, you know, oftentimes gets questioned about this from my religious views, and just to kind of put it in the context of just a full on um, breakdown. So, a proper background is in order. When I was, for as long as I can remember, I've always been Catholic. It was a faith I grew up in, but I had various perspectives that didn't align with the Bible. I was a backer of gay marriage, and I didn't condemn homosexuality. I didn't think it was something that was immoral. And I accepted, as I had people who were, saying this is not in line with your religion, that this was a view that I had to have on my own. Um, and I've tried to define my perspective of religion as being one that's mixed with some level of realism. Like you have people who will sit in poor situations or scenarios and they'll call themselves praying to God that it gets better, hoping that it becomes perfect through whatever measure of their own. And I've always tried to say, there's nothing wrong with necessarily feeling that way, but me personally, I would like to believe that, it's a scenario I have some basic level of control over. And so that would mean that would entail that I would see myself as the person who has to change the scenario. And there's nothing to say that consulting some higher deity is wrong if you choose to feel that way, but it's to suggest you have to be pragmatic about things. Um, I can't just pray for $1 million and it's going to be in my pocket. So I kind of have that perspective when it comes to just reliance on these figures that are in religion. And one of the things I've tried to clarify is in having the position I have, it also accounts for tolerance. You've accepted alternate lifestyles as long as they don't interfere in your own. Other people have their own various views and beliefs, and I've condoned those as well. Really, the only time where I feel a tendency to be outspoken with my perspective on religion is typically when someone calls into question my views. Now that's when I'll be more likely to just go out and say, "This is how I feel about this, how I feel about that." And in having that belief system, I don't think people, I think it's a good system to follow because it means that none of us are, how do I say this? We're accepting of the fact that other people don't feel the same we do about faith. Even if we've ourselves, such as myself, become disillusioned with it over a number of things that we felt both in and out of our control. Um, Now, as far as the name of my ideology, I kept trying to make this comparison. In the 90s, the Democrats called themselves moving to the right, and they had a brand name for these Democrats. They were called New Democrats, and I've been calling myself a new Catholic in terms of being a modernized sort of pragmatic scientific approach while also, having faith in not just a Lord, but also, the goodness of people. You like to have some belief that most individuals you meet have some good quality in them, even if they're showing you something that is counter to that. You want to think that there there's more to them than meets the eye. To quote a certain franchise, and you don't want to become so invested in your own thoughts and belief system that you scare away others who might just be curious about what your perspective is on things. Um, and I would say this pathology. You say hello to MBA. Is it, yeah, NBA tour. Yeah, we're doing a much later than usual stream. I just wasn't able to do it earlier. All these interruptions and whatnot. I'm discussing my religious beliefs and views on things, and just why I've chosen to adopt certain aspects of my ideology, and whether or not that's accepted by the other person or someone who sees this is out of my control. Really, it's just this thing where you accept circumstances that you're not exactly that you wouldn't partake in as just being out of your control. Let me say hello to uh, Tiller. If I'm pronoun- do you want your full name or just your first name? I don't know. I guess it depends, probably. Um, yeah, but the people who seem to have the what do you? All right, well, let me finish this point I'm making. Um, the people who seem to have the biggest issue with it usually are those are people of my religion who call themselves being more devout than I am, and I say, hey, you can call yourself that. I refuse to believe that the high point of religion is to just blindly worship text from thousands of years ago. Text, if someone said, prove this stuff happened, I would just shrug my shoulders. I couldn't prove it to you. Does that mean it didn't happen? No, but I couldn't certify its existence. I like to believe it happened, at least, most stories that I've read of it, but I couldn't, just put a stamp on it and go, no, this is true, no matter what you say. So it's attempting to, I don't want to say play to both sides, but at least understand where someone would be a skeptic. All right, so let me respond to what exactly do you do for fun? I have a variety of activities. Sometimes I like to go out for a jog. Other times write, uh, read something. There's a couple of things out there. Maybe that was a brief answer. So hopefully that's been satisfied or that question's been addressed. Yeah, it saddens me that we have such a circumstance when it comes to views on things that people will actually find themselves getting upset with, you know, deciding to be of the belief that people are not, entirely hell bent on something. What I mean by that is you don't have this level of just understanding where someone says, "Wait a second, are you sure that happened?" I cannot tell you how many times just personally I've seen someone get into an argument over another person calling religion a bunch of fables. And look, when someone's been dispirited with how things have gone on personally in their life, and they think that praying, in both good and bad times didn't do anything, they're not going to. There's a good chance they're not going to see it as something to take seriously. It's just the way things are. Let me say a little CP. Full on skeptic here. It's kind of strange because I'm the only one in my family that isn't Christian. You know, um, I've had a lot of people who have expressed that similar view. My thing is that it's funny to me how you'll have people who almost because you don't follow it to a T will criticize you for having skepticism or just getting tired of constantly telling someone, oh yeah, just believe in God and things will improve. Just pray for me. Just pray. It's almost in recent times as I've seen people get older become something of a joke where we're mocking, oh, this test is gonna be really hard, pray for me. We say hello to now that day has come. CP says they call me a demon and say I am going to hell. And look, that's again my problem with these um, heavy set religious I guess individuals. I refuse to believe that the only way you can go to heaven is if you just follow some guidelines of some book, and that anyone who doubts it, remember, text that was not only written thousands of years ago, but has stories that scientifically could not happen today. If that, I don't buy if this God actually is around, that he would condone the idea that everyone who doesn't believe these things that can be perceived as myths and fables is automatically going to hell and is, Satan worshiper or whatever. I don't buy it. So that's my perspective on it. Just this whole thing of follow this to a T or else. And that doesn't even, that's not actually even in line with, this supposed forgiving character. What forgiving person is going to say, or entity is going to say, because you lived a moral life but didn't follow this book from thousands of years ago to a T, bye bye. I don't. That sounds like the person or the figure described in the Bible to you. This is the person I'm supposed to pray to and ask for help and aid and apologize for doing something wrong. That character. So that's a thought I'm not really going to subscribe to. Um, it's kind of funny that they talk about how religion and politics are the main things that I guess cause people to have their rebellion and whatever. But it just feels like everything has kind of spun off from there. Like I've had people flip out over movies. I told the story a couple of days ago about the guy that was sitting here and talking about you have a mental deficit because you didn't like this one film. Um, and this is someone I talked with about both of those other two subjects, and we got along just fine. We didn't even agree on one of those, and it was just whatever. So it's wow. CP said I think the Bible was used for controlling the masses and guilt trip people who don't obey. Um, I think it was maybe written for the purpose of expressing some kind of story that was supposed to be enlightening or possibly lend itself to our imaginations. And people took it and said, you know what, we're going to make every single thing in here be the designated doctrine of how you have to live. And if you don't follow this to a T, it's time to to meet your maker. Again, no matter how well or how good you acted in other avenues of your life, because you don't worship this text, it's over for you. So I can see that perspective. See what happened to the NBA tour. He just disappeared. He said hello and was never again seen. You'll see him on Unsolved Mysteries next week. They bring that show back just to question what happened to the various people that were in the chat room. Let's see here. All right, so going back to what I was saying, um, I've also tried to clarify. Someone doesn't like your opinion. Oh, well, yeah, that's typical. I mean, and what we've actually started seeing, CP, is just people like to go and dislike something without even seeing it. I did a whole stream on issues with Obama, for example, and without even seeing it, dislike after dislike after dislike. So it's weird, but it is what it is. It's a kind of disturbing thing that you've had people actually align themselves with the idea of I'm going to watch you and moderate you, uh, while seemingly disliking everything that you put out. Don't talk about. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, again, look, I have when I've tried to explain this. I have no problem defending views of mine, but if we're going to get into a game where all we do is click buttons and grandstand in comment sections, that won't get anywhere. And like I said, if these views are so offensive to the people participating in them, they're more than welcome to leave. It just I've never understood the tendency to go and seek out what you call yourself despising or disliking. Literally, in the case of what happened earlier. Again, they can keep this game going. I can also keep my own cycle of retaliation and continuation. Because again, you have individuals who I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. It won't change my opinions on things. So it is what it is. Um, but yeah, the entire purpose behind my ideology was just to accept the fact that you have so many variant lifestyles from the Bible that it almost becomes impossible, at least from my perspective, to think all of this stuff is just going to be condemned by this higher figure. You're going to have opposition uh, times 100 to all of these opposing religions and various. I mean, you have people saying that tattoos are sacrilege. This is all kind of stuff they're going after now. So, like I said, my tolerance, I guess it's just it's worn thin for you know most individuals. That's why with the consistent dislike group, I keep telling them it doesn't change anything. It's like if you were to go and paint a house red and the guy takes a can of, I don't know, green paint and just splatters it all back over there. It completely was erased by that person catching wind of what you were doing. So it's a weird process, man. That's all I can say. And again, I've tried to explain that when you have a small amount of time, this is why I did the stream on death. A lot of us, when we're 20 or 30 or even in some cases 40, have this idea of, well, I'm going to be around for another 50 years. And, a lot of times people don't get that. But they spend so much time investing their interest in things they call themselves disliking that they end up just letting everything that was supposedly decent go away. Because remember, if someone is disliking that stuff, they didn't just randomly stumble upon this stream. They looked for it. They said, I'm gonna make sure I show my disapproval with that, and kept it moving. And you ask yourself, who would sit there and invest that much time in not only an unknown individual, but also in a person that they call themselves, knowing that they have distaste for. Again, I don't get the doctrine. Just like I don't get the strict religious doctrine either for Catholicism. So to have members of that group tell me about exo communication, man, give me a break. So man, it's nothing but a bunch of papers that have some decent things written on them, some not so decent things written on them. But the worst mistake people made was in trying to hold someone else to our own standards, especially if it's in a way that is not conducive to the law. So the law has made it to where now, for example, gays can get married. If that's not in the Bible, so what? That's why it's called separation of church and state. Um, and people in some cases don't want to accept that. And I've tried to explain that when you have these various religious groups trying to dictate the laws, you oftentimes run into problems because we're talking about a set ideology that not every citizen of that country or various jurisdiction is going to find themselves wanting to engage with, but they don't seem to recognize that. They go and just keep having these protests and trying to stick their perspective on others, which is actually being done on a much smaller scale here. But like I said, it's really disturbing. And again, I would highly recommend that group who seems to have the purpose of going after someone that they call themselves not liking. Go watch the stream on death. That entire thing is done with the intent of showing life is too short to sit there and continue investing so much time and effort in the things you call yourself despising. The CP says, I hear people say that America is a Christian country, though. Well, if you go look up the religion of the founding fathers, that is not the case. Let's see. Now that day has come, says, like how Jehovah's Witnesses shun those that don't follow the religion, yet tell people that Jesus loves. Yeah, Jesus loves you, but apparently not the people who are, supposedly following his doctrine. Isn't that something? I mean, it kind of reminds me of how you have a lot of people. I'm not even going to get into that. We're going to mix. I'll put you like this: there are many historical figures of contemporary notes that people call themselves liking, to where they vote 90% for that person, and then if you go and look up and ask most of them, what schools this person go to, how long were they in this job before they took this office, and it's all public information. I don't sit here and talk about Judaism or Islam or any of the other faiths as much as Catholicism, because I was reared in that form of Christianity. I don't put emphasis on things I'm not entirely familiar with. That's why most of my stuff has to do with political things, um, religion. In some cases now a little bit of religious stuff, and then also people acting stupid or doing something that I'm opposed to, which in some cases can be synonymous with that it is what it is. But yeah, I hope that I've explained. I think if people go back and watch the start of this, they'll hear my perspective when there was no one else sitting in here. But I hope that I have espoused the views that I have, and like I said, it is very disturbing when a list of people, it's not like it's one person doing it, a swarm of individuals um, would rather crowd themselves with the negativity of pursuing a person who doesn't have any interest in them. CP says, I hate it when they just come to my door, preach to me. They have the nerve to trespass my property with their silly nose. Be careful, or else you'll be called, some kind of slanderous term. Yeah, people get offended over everything now. That's why you can't even speak on a subject in a respectful manner without, you know, being called all kinds of different names. I mean, we really do live in the era of monolithic thought, like with just everything now. But in especially with religion, you have people who are not, I mean, I gave you the example. This person I knew last year, she wasn't any authority figure in the Catholic Church, and then we'll start talking about your exo communicating yourself according to the doctrine or something. Man, it's just a bunch of little goofy papers. Get out of here. And again, if heaven is truly based, and this is my ideology, if heaven is truly based around worshiping text from the beginning of the days of the earth versus conducting an ethical and moral life, it was nowhere worth going to begin with. Because any higher deity who holds blind loyalty to papers over being a productive member of society as the standards to enter his kingdom of you know uh, cake and honey or whatever is not someone I need to involve myself with. And it's as simple as that. So I have no way of making it any more clear. I just wish that the group that's doing this would go find someone else. But we can't control who pays us attention, as I've figured out a while ago. So if anyone else has anything else to say, they can say it now, or I would say forever hold their peace. But I'll do something else tomorrow. So let's see. Um, well, it's kind of it has to do with the same thing with these political parties. When you're brought up in a system that tells you this is good, this is bad, you don't. Not only do you not want to think of the possibility of the other thing being more acceptable than what you are indoctrinated with, you also think that people who choose to engage differently have something wrong with them, or in some cases, they might be misguided. Again, there's a method to calling it. unwillingness to just to be tolerant of other views, but it also has to do with a genuine fear that because this person isn't living the same way that you are, then they're somehow missing something. That, because we think of these other places to fulfill ourselves that have not been proven to exist, like heaven, we call ourselves trying to, you know, make sure that person down here is doing what they need to go up there. And even in saying that, I'd like to believe that there is some higher group. But my personal preference for afterlife would be that you get a place where all of those you knew in your life, or those you wanted to know, whether they're a historical figure or some relative from 100 years ago you never met, are all available in one pantheon place for you to talk with and be with for the rest of eternity. And if that isn't it, I would be sorely disappointed. Not, and the worst part is that as people talk about what happens afterward and cessation and yada yada yada, it sounds more like you just become bones and you feel or hear nothing, and that is a disturbing thing to deal with. So I really would like the faith perspective I have of that to come to pass, but I don't think it will be the case. Um, Again, based off of what people have called themselves proving or conducting or theorizing. As a biology major, it's hard to believe. Yeah, I don't look. I'm not. My reluctance would not be so if it wasn't hard to believe. But I'm saying that that's more based on an idealist standpoint of my preference, as if I could actually make my own afterlife. But in knowing I can't, or at least believing I can't, that's the scenario that I'm presuming. Okay, Matthew says, first time I've ever made it into one of these. Yeah, you're coming all the way at the end. I was getting ready to close this off. I was saying, we're going to get like two people talking in the chat. Maybe one says something every 3 minutes. Someone else says some woman. I can't, put pressure on one person. Just keep typing and typing and typing. So I said, all right, well, maybe I should just try this tomorrow. Now that day has come, says people don't really need to follow the Bible to a T. Jesus said to love God, love your neighbor, and the rest will follow. No need for all these crazy religions when that's the most important part of the Bible to me. Um, yeah, when you see pastors in these, just all across the U.S. calling for the deaths of homosexuals or some other group that they call themselves not condoning and then the epidemic in the Catholic Church of these booty busting various preachers and whatnot, it just becomes very hypocritical and just weird. I can't completely get behind it. So that's been kind of the thing where I'm reluctant to fully embrace that idea as being one that's espoused. But even though I'll agree that the church has been of assistance to people, but that's still something that goes on. Don't forget those highly religious KKK people. Oh yeah, well that's the thing. People will use religion to almost justify any ridiculous um, idea or measure. You go back to the Nazis, you go to the KKK, you go to just any group. It's always um, related to some warped view of how, or at least warped in my opinion, for all I know it could be true, to some warped view of how the world works, and Jesus is going to condone us for not liking this group. All of that, they've used it in any negative context. CP says they love their Jesus and they love to burn their crosses. Matthias says religion has always seemed more dangerous to me than beneficial. Yeah, I'd like to believe that when people are in a down spot and they want to hope that something is up there listening to them, it's a good idea. But as far as using your ideology of, oh, this is why I'm going to carry out my hatred, no, yeah, I get that perspective too. Is what I'm saying. It can be used in both ways, but I think when it's used more negatively, like with the Klan and with the Nazis, they tend to get more coverage, and that becomes our general idea of religion and its execution, often used to call for executions. Cleo says it's God that says that gays are to be put, that pastors are just carrying out God's words. And look, I've disagreed with those words. if you say I disagree with God, so be it. I can't condone it. I've actually come to rhetorical, verbal blows with various, quote unquote, more religious people for having that perspective. And I said, look, I don't care um, if this figure is truly upset with me for trying to be tolerant of people whose only, crime supposedly is in liking some of the same sex. Strike me down right now. I'm waiting. So I have a hard time backing it. And also, why would he come after uh, the homosexuals who he expects the least from, and not these people who are having children out of wedlock and disavowing their mother and father and doing pretty much everything else that is said in the Bible itself to be a problem. So if he, before he wants to get on the on homosexuals, he's gonna have to go after people that supposedly are from his group that are causing all kind of distresses for society according to the scripture. That's just my perspective. Why go after the man you think less of as opposed to the one you think more of? Oh man, everybody left out of here. Matthias went to bed. Cleo went to bed. CP took a nap. The whole group passed out. Uh, Matthias says, I think there is no space for organized religion in civilized society. It is magical thinking. Yeah, I told you, man, that hocus and pocus and again fables and you sometimes you read stuff in the Bible and just because of modern culture you start thinking of Narnia and all these other tales that we've seen in films since then. And it sucks because the Bible can't help, the comparisons you make to it, but just from the how technology's advanced and what we've been able to see and hear about other than that, it all goes together now. For better or for worse. And I think it is for worse because now you start reading that stuff and, giggling and cracking up. Let's see. Matthias says the Bible would be a great book if it wasn't purported to be nonfiction. Well, again, I have no reason to say that none of it happened. I can't defend it when people say that it didn't happen. I'm just sitting there stuck. I'm like, well, I have to say this might have been the case. I'm not sure. So I'm supposed to believe a guy named Lazarus rose up from a pit and came back to life, and that a guy was nailed to a cross, and then 72 hours later just reappeared, got resurrected with the Dragon Balls. Just no, man. And then CP is laughing at something. And then Matthias says, I think it is loosely based on true events, gross exaggerations on the part of creative authors. Um, yeah, I don't, it could be the same thing. They just try to make it, well, that's my thing, CP. I'm not here to really play for either side. I'm just saying that it's because of sitting there and just trying to think of it logically and not being able to justify it, but still wanting to follow certain parts for that I think are good. Um, that's why I call myself a new Catholic. I'm a little bit over here, a little bit over there, just in the middle. Apparently centrist religion at this point. And look, I have, my thing is that the benefit I can see from my perspective is that because I'm not um, entirely for one side or the other, I'm less likely to just sit there and argue back and forth like I would something, political or another topic I feel more confident about. Okay, Matthew says, so I might have missed this, but do you believe in life after death? I'd like to believe in it. I'm going to say yes. Uh, but again, to what it actually is, I have no idea. I have a preference, which I expressed earlier. Um, but that thing of we're just going to turn to bones and dirt, that is a a very a not too promising tale. So, if anyone else anything else to say, you let me know. See, it's the harsh truth we humans run from. It is our downfall. I thought you couldn't send more than two messages before the thing will like hold them back and go, slow down, you're talking too much. So I would like life after death, but when I think of life after, I get the image of zombies. I always get the image of people in white clothes with halos, with angel wings, and sitting on clouds and all that stuff you see in any televised version of that, pretty much like on The Simpsons. I don't know if Matthias is laughing at what I said or what CP said. Oh, okay. Well, I know now. But you are dead, but somehow you have life. No, I look at it as this. It is a continuation. Like I explain from what I picture, maybe you can get hurt, but you can't have serious ailments. You don't worry about dying. You don't worry about, oh man, I only have 5 more years of this person before it's over. Because now you know that you can see whenever you want for as long as you want. That's just what I would think of as life after death. Cleo says the only reason God created us is to worship Him. Maybe so. Okay, there's three people talking. Can I get one more like before I close that off too? Okay, Matthias says metaphysical continuation, physical death equals whoever did that. Thank you. Equals external life. Hard to conceptualize. CP says gonna be like Thriller. Again, I would sing that song, but copyright has it to where I'm barred from any type of music. It's just a running theme where every time there's some jingle that has to do with whatever the circumstances, I can't sing it because they start talking about the studio owns your lyrics and your words, and soon they can get you for your voice. When I talk, they can sue me. So it's all going to hell. Mm. So if anyone else has anything else to say, speak now. Forever hold your peace. Arm is getting a little tired. I told my parents I was an atheist about a month ago, and they flipped. Yeah, I don't like that either. That intolerance, and I've noticed that as a running theme where you have religious people. Not only will they get intolerant of lifestyles, like you had this Republican candidate. I think about maybe 18 years ago. His name was Alan Keyes. He threw out his daughter after she revealed herself to be a lesbian, and he was talking about, oh, it's destroying her soul and yada yada, all that nonsense. Um, but not only do you have people who reject certain lifestyles, they despise just the thoughts of something being opposed to their own. I hate that. That's why one of the things that really turned me off from many aspects of religion. This idea that if the person doesn't appeal to the way I want them to be, then they're just problematic. We can't have them. They can't be accepted in our garden. CP says, "Oh, don't tell parents you are atheist until you move out." Matthias says, "Where were you a month ago? LOL." She was probably playing. What was the name of that game? Terrace or something. she was she was over there on the computer. She couldn't speak to you. Whatever the game's name is, I forgot. Should have said World of Warcraft. That would have been a much easier and more mainstream candidate for the speculative game. Yeah, it's a very dangerous title. I can't wait for the next DLC pack for all of these games to be heaven and hell themed, and now make this stream all the more appropriate. You'll just retroactively feel that everything you discussed and theorized and thought about just came to fruition here. So it's definitely going to pick up. Right, Matthews was CP says I would love it more games to play. Oh my God, this thing froze again. Um, you should still be able to hear me. I can't see anything you're writing. Technology is awful now. But thanks everyone who participated, and I will have something else up tomorrow. So I appreciate it.